Welcome back to another week of Every Day We're Covering. Chris Parks and SJ Munoz with you once again to talk some of the wagering world. And of course, we now know who will be playing in Super Bowl 58. The Kansas City Chiefs, San Francisco 49ers were able to advance off championship weekend. A couple of pretty decent football games to watch, so that was good for the spectators. And SJ, I guess as far as trying to make a little coin goes, we kind of just split even on the weekend.
Yeah, it looked like we might have had a shot there in the early going, but then I guess they didn't feel like scoring any more points there in the AFC once about halftime hit. It was,
Yeah.
and it didn't matter for the winning team because they'd done enough. But yeah, kind of getting the details, of course, later. But yeah, we did okay. I guess anytime 50-50 is not a bad record when it comes to the gambling world.
Yeah. And I think, overall, the way that we kind of looked at it, we knew that they were both going to be probably pretty interesting games and a lot of things could go one way or the other. So it wasn't like we were feeling, uber confident about anything that was going to happen this past weekend. So I think most people probably played it pretty light. But yeah, it's a couple good football games. We'll go in detail about those and, of course, recap our selections. We'll talk a little bit then about the matchup that'll come up here at the Super Bowl. We've got a couple of headlines in the college football world to talk about, and we'll also touch on a couple of things going on with college basketball as well. Of course, that's kind of what we'll transition to probably here after the Super Bowl wraps up and we're into that portion of the year. But as we get started, we always talk about what we're pouring down our gullet as well. And tonight, I have to admit, I went a little too hard on Saturday, so I was kind of like, do I really want to pull anything out of the fridge here today? Kind of put myself on a hiatus, but I figured, well, got to be true to the program. I'm here for the people, so pulled one out, and this is one actually I normally probably wouldn't buy, and it's not really my full style, but it was the right price, $0. So I'm gonna go ahead and take that. And it's the fine folks at Toppling Goliath who do a really good job. And this is a collab brew. They did this with Luau Brewing Company, who's out of Des Moines, and then Sapwood Cellars, who is also connected to them as well. But it's a double IPA called Celestial Paradox. Like I said, kind of a little on the heavy, the hop side for me, but it's all right. If somebody's into that kind of stuff, I can see how they would enjoy it. How about yourself?
Yeah, and that price point, you can't really go wrong either.
No,
so
I can't argue.
Anything for that price, I'll be choking it down myself too. Either way, I actually went with one of my favorites, probably top 5 of anything I've ever sampled. It's out of Oklahoma. The Prairie Artisan Ales makes it the Rainbow Sherbet or Sherbert, depending on your pronunciation there. But it's a sour ale. Just it just hits perfect, honestly. Like as far as a sour, like this would be like the definition of a sour to me. That's kind of. I mean, they make any and everything, just like a lot of the craft brewers these days. But I'd say sours is kind of like the money spot. They also make another Skittles. It's like a Skittles flavored sour. I mean, literally, like it feels like you melted down a bag of Skittles and poured it in a glass, and then you catch a buzz on top. So can't go wrong there. But
No.
yeah, definitely one of my favorites. A top 5 of no matter what type of beer, sour, stout, lager, whatever. It's an amazing beer, and I don't often say good things about Oklahoma, so it's good if I'm saying that.
That sounds like a good one. I'm gonna have to track that down sometime. I
Yeah,
kind of go.
distribution's pretty decent
Is
too.
it?
So I think you could probably find it up in your parts too. I
Okay.
don't think they got bought out by another bigger entity, so
Yeah.
they're getting pretty out there, at least on the regional scene.
Yeah. That's definitely one of those styles for me where it kind of like comes and goes a little bit. Like I'll get in a groove and try a few of them for a while, and then you kind of get away from it. You go back. That's how I am with it. But yeah, definitely like when they're well done, it's good. And that's something interesting too to point out. I think that's kind of the case now for a lot of these small craft breweries that are doing maybe a little bit smaller scale. Usually, there's something that they're really kind of known for and good at. They're gonna have that one style that's kind of their thing, and I think that's the right way to go for most of them because then you can kind of hit that marketing strategy the right way. Obviously, you want to try to please the masses as best you can, but sometimes you just got to kind of have your shtick, and that's a good thing for them then apparently. So
Yeah, we've
cool.
seen it too. Sometimes you kind of get over your skis, so to speak, and end up kind of doing too much, and
Mhm.
less is more. And sometimes, especially with a smaller outfit, it's it's a little bit better to focus on one thing, I think, and you can tell what they started with, or at least what their specialty, or a lot of times it's just what they like. That's why
Yeah.
they kind of perfect it because it's how they would like the drink to taste as well.
Yeah, that's very true. We'll, of course, continue to sample some from all over the place and give you some recommendations as we move along. And as we've said before, if you got something you want us to try and you got an idea, then give us a shout out. We'll certainly be happy to oblige. Let's get into the football here. We'll start with how things went in the championship games. Starting off with the AFC Championship, which was the first game there on Sunday. Kansas City 17, Baltimore 10. We were looking for the over in the game, which was at 44.5. And like you said, the way the game started, okay, we're probably going to get there because they were scoring right away. But then it all shut down. Yeah, the defenses absolutely took over the rest away in that game. The Chiefs found a way to get it done. I think a lot of people probably were looking different directions on this. And of course, I think a lot of the pundit talk was, this is Baltimore's time. This is Lamar's time to rise up and win the big game. And I certainly think you have to give credit to Kansas City defensively for making that not happen, because they certainly made his life difficult in that game on Sunday.
Yeah, kind of what I think you were in agreement too, but as far as the prediction and what we thought was going to happen, what I circled most was just the quarterback play, and that's not some, groundbreaking statement, or I'm not the only one that thought that, but I mean, when you look at the numbers, it kind of played out that way. I think Jackson ended up 54%, which, okay, I guess not terrible, but it was just the pressure that Kansas City got on him. He got sacked 4 times. And of course, just the errant throws, and then of course towards the end the interception was just kind of the story of the day. And then even you throw in Flowers with that, with the dive in the end zone. You can't fault a player for giving that extra effort, but at the same time you got to know the situation and what's on the line. At that point in time, it wasn't a good decision. Of course, easy to look back and say this, that, and the other, but I'm just overall, I think just Kansas City proved that they'd been there, done that, and Baltimore is still learning how to, and maybe they never will learn how to, because even the penalties, of course, you can debate whatever the penalties are, but just in the moment, you got to it's hard to do, but the good teams are able to find a way to not get that 15-yard penalty, or not make a critical mistake. What they have about 8 penalties, 95 yards. So you're not going to win a lot of games, and then scoring only. I guess they got 10, but basically 7 points the whole game. That's just it doesn't really matter who you're playing. If 7 points in a playoff game, especially a conference championship, it's not going to get it done.
Yeah. And, I don't think anybody's taken anything away from the season that Lamar Jackson had, because he certainly was great. I mean, they even talked about it during the broadcast multiple times. When they played the good teams, they beat them, and they beat them well during the regular season. So it wasn't like they were, unproven and you were waiting for that moment. But when it comes down to it in that crunch time, I think that's what you said is a big part of it. A lot of those guys from Kansas City have been there, done that. They know how these situations work. But it also goes to show you, I think, just how finite some of those plays are, where you need to make that, that big throw, or you need to, kind of go above and beyond and maybe throw a guy open, those types of things. And it seemed like all game long, Lamar was just a little bit off. And most of the time it was a little bit deep. He was like 1 or 2 yards too deep to make that big play happen. And you've got to hit some of those. And you saw Mahomes do it at the very end of the game when he needed to make that biggest play, to end it. And he did. So that's just kind of the difference. For whatever reason, Patrick Mahomes just has that gene to rise to the occasion, and he makes the play when he needs to.
Well, I think something needs to be said as for his strategy as well. I didn't see Jackson out running as much, or just in the giving him a chance to make a play. There was a lot of drop back, 5-step drops. We don't get a lot. I'm not a Sunday ticket. I'm not going to spend that $400. But the times I have seen the Ravens, I don't remember a lot of little 5 and 7 step drops for when they've had success this season, and even just running the ball. You didn't see. I don't believe Edwards even got to 10 carries, did he? I mean, he hardly touched the ball. So, if you're going to establish the run, I would think you'd have to give the running back the ball. That kind of goes hand in hand there. So, no, nothing taken away from the victors, but at the same time, that needs to go along with the criticism, because I do think he did not have a great game, and it's kind of been a trend of Lamar Jackson to play poorly in these big spotlight moments. But it wasn't all on him. But we've said it, time and time again. We'll keep saying it. The quarterback gets, too much credit and too much blame all at the same time. So
Yeah.
that's just the nature of the position. So it's not all on him, but he definitely has made a reputation for himself now, and it's up to him to change it if he wants that to not to be his legacy going forward. I know that was a big the catchphrase there, legacy. I guess somebody mentioned that during the game. I had it on mute. I just can't do it anymore. So, but I heard that somebody said that the goofball said something like that.
Yeah, Edwards 3 carries, Hill 3 carries. So I mean, it is like they almost just gave up on it right away. Now, of course, a lot of that's credit to they went 3 and out quite a bit too. They didn't run a ton of plays, but yeah, and I think obviously that's what Steve Spagnuolo, you could tell, wanted to do from the get-go. He was going to crowd the box. He was going to bring 8 guys up and try to stop that run right away, make it hard for Lamar to find any open lanes right away if he was going to run, and then just make it, hey, if you're going to win, you're going to pass on us. And then that's kind of what they just lent themselves into. But I agree. The one thing that did surprise me the most was that Lamar didn't make those decisions faster just to take off and run a lot, because I thought there were moments where he could have done that. Maybe it wasn't going to be the typical 30, 40-yard plays that they're used to getting from him and breaking a game open, but he still had a lot of moments where I thought he probably could have got 10, 15. You saw Josh Allen do that the week before against that same defense. So obviously different styles are going to attack you differently, but that did surprise me that he didn't use his legs more than he did during the game. I mean, 54 yards, 8 carries. That's, not a lot for him.
Well, and I think his long was like 21 yards. So,
Yeah.
You take that out and the average really goes down other than that one long run. It just almost seemed to me, and only he knows this, and no one's ever going to know unless lie detector thing or something of that sort. But it's almost like he was trying to prove that he could beat them in a certain way, rather than just win the game. That's just a assessment, I guess. Nobody knows except for him. But to me, that's the only thing that would kind of make sense, and I think it's a bad decision, and obviously it turned out to be so.
And the other thing that you alluded to, and I don't want to harp on it too much, but I did think that in that moment, how do you make that many big mental mistakes? I mean, and the play with Flowers, I mean, he probably gets away with it if he doesn't throw the ball at him. I mean, it's like simple things, dude. I know you're fired up, you make a play. That's the game of football. There's always emotion involved, but you knew that was probably not the thing to do. Like, you've probably been called for that same thing before if you'd done it that way. And then, of course, a couple plays later, karma came back to bite him because L'Jarius Sneed goes back after him and is the one that knocks the ball out. So you can't do those things in that type of game and expect to get to the end and be victorious.
Yeah, agree. I mean, like you said, it's nothing to harp on, but it's just kind of unfathomable, I guess is the word to put on it. It's just, there's no problem with being excited, but there's just there's a way to go about it. And especially when you make a play like that, everyone's looking right at you. Every single referee is looking right at you. It's, you kind of got to be a little, you can talk your junk and do everything else, but make sure it's when the ref's back's turned. I mean, you've been playing football for 20 years at this point. You got to know how to sneak it in and get away with it.
Yeah.
This isn't your first rodeo. You got to know when to, kind of pull back and when to let it rip.
Well, and that particular play, you had a long ways to go still. Game was still way out of your reach at that point. So come on, dude. Let's reel it in a little bit. I did think.
That's the thing too. Even as much as they were dominant, they had chances there. It's just they couldn't put it together to make a run. But that was kind of the thing there that stuck out, is just that even though it was a very dominant first half, there was still a chance for Baltimore to come back, but they just couldn't get out of their own way.
Yeah, and I do think that there were a couple of times where I thought Kelsey was out of hand too, and probably should have got one. The one that they called when it was a reactionary thing after he was already involved. He probably should have
baiting him into that, but I mean, he fell for it too at the same time. But yeah, he was totally being he's getting to the point where it's even if he's on your team, you might be like this,
he needs to chill a little bit.
Get us one more ring and maybe go ahead and hit the bricks in a nice way, of course.
Yeah.
I mean, you don't want to give up a talent like that, but he's getting to be one of those guys, man.
Yeah.
I don't know. Maybe it's just showing because I doubt he changed overnight.
And I like the guy, and you hear him talk in, an off-field situation. He seems pretty reasonable and down to earth and understands. And even in those moments, he's made fun of himself for doing the wrong thing before, but he gets caught up. He gets caught up in the moment and he does some dumb. I mean, at the end, and of course, the afterwards, the award presentation, he's got his little stick and I knew he was going to do that. But then even after that, it was kind of like, dude, this isn't the WWE. Like, we don't have to, we don't have to build this thing up. Everybody knows the Super Bowl is a big deal. Like,
I think it could be, friggin' the Maine Lobsters against, whatever the friggin' Arizona Cactuses. And if it's in the Super Bowl, everybody's watching. Like, seriously, like, there's no promo needed. You don't need to, no, it's no hype, How many, probably more football fans than not watch the Super Bowl, or more non-traditional football fans, of course, watch it for the commercials and the halftime show and all that stuff. So there's no promo needed. But yeah, I mean, guess have your fun while you can, whatever. Yeah. But yeah, I'm not gonna watch. I'll watch Super Bowl, but I'm not gonna watch all that extra fluff. Like, interviews. Even in the other game, we saw a little bit of odd comments too. But I don't know.
Yeah. One thing I did think was cool with him, and of course, I kind of like the guys, just the way that they interact with each other. But if you saw the little interaction he had with his brother Jason on the field, was pretty neat. I said to my wife, like, it's just cool, I think, to see two brothers that are like that supportive of each other. I don't know that I know you see that, but just in the way they are, and of course the level that they're at, you would almost think, as from Jason's standpoint, there's got to be a little bit of him eating him inside, that's like, this should be me kind of thing, like, but it doesn't show, they're just so supportive of each other. And I think that's cool. I'm glad that they did catch that part of it.
Yeah, that's what I always think of too. And I think maybe it's because he's the older brother. It's a little bit more like, kind of a pride type of thing in his younger brother. But God, that's got to be eating you inside, knowing, like, he's as good as center as there's been in the league in the last 10 or so years. And he's yet to, really get that, of course, I think with the off the field stuff and just like getting out there in their little celebrity world, it's definitely drawn more attention to him. But I mean, as far as on the field accolades and things like that, he's done well, but he hasn't, got all those, rings and championships like his brother has. So I don't know. He's a better man than most of us. Cause I mean, I don't know. Like I'd be happy for him, but I'd definitely watch it from a distance. I don't think I could be going to the games, especially when, you just lost not long ago. And that's still got to be a fresh wound as far as that goes for, your season kind of falling apart the way it did, especially this year with Philadelphia.
Yeah, true enough. So that was the AFC Championship. And of course, as we mentioned, our wager there didn't go the way we wanted it to. We thought there would be some more points. Kind of thought the quarterbacks would do more, but the defenses ruled the day there, especially in that second half. The NFC Championship turned out a lot different than it started. The Detroit Lions got out to a rousing start, and it thought, man, is this going to be a blowout? Because that's what it looked like early on. And then they they got a little bit in their own way for sure. Made some bad decisions, and then I thought kind of got away from what they were doing well too. But the 49ers got some breaks, they got some bounces, and they came roaring back to win the game 34-31. It ties the largest comeback in that game's history at 17 points. And the 49ers find a way to get there. I think, obviously, San Francisco, from the start, was a team that everybody thought had the potential to be in this position, and they found a way to get it done.
Yeah, I mean, obviously we were interested in that cover, and then they got it done there at the end. But even as the game went on, I found myself, heading in, I kind of wanted to see just Detroit. We talked about how kind of tortured that fan base has been, so it would have been nice to see him get in. Of course, the first concern is covering that number, and of course they build a 17-point lead, and you're saying, okay, we got the cover. Let's go ahead and why don't you go ahead and win it all, and just let's have a good storyline there. But like you said, made the plays, and the gambles we mentioned last, heading into the game, how Campbell's no stranger to taking these chances. And I think just even with the first game, it's easy to go back and point to certain things, but these were in, critical moments. Were the first one 4th and 2 at the Niners 28 with 7 minutes left in the third. I mean, you had a 24-10 lead at that point. Why not? I know he missed, but he came back to, drill one Moody. You got, another kick and you get a 17-point lead back, instead of going for it. And then, they don't get it. And freaking Niners score like within 3 or 4 minutes after that. So then you're looking at a, a 7-point game a 7-point game where it could have been a 17 points. So, I mean, just that. And then even at the end of the game, they're down 3 points instead of going for the tie. when it's a makeable field goal, you choose to go for it. And then that
Mm-hmm.
was game set match because Niners just took it into the end zone. Of course, we cared about that last touchdown, and that was good on our end.
Yeah.
But I mean, it didn't mean anything in the actual game itself. But for us, that was a hell of a last drive there. We appreciated that.
Yeah.
But it was kind of it was tough to see, man. Of course, of all the no team wants to give up that type of lead, but this type of fan base on top of that, they haven't even had any measure of success, and this last couple years have gotten a lot better. Here and there, they had Stafford, Megatron had some decent teams, but never made it to this point. And then you think you got it. Of course, you shouldn't think that way, and it's up. The players weren't, but as a fan, you got a 17-point lead in the NFC Championship. You might be looking at tickets and hotel rooms in Vegas. I mean, how could you not? Like that's and the way they were playing too. Like they had total control of that game. San Francisco looked like they could do nothing. Their defense was all over the place. I mean, that was just that one play to Ayuk though seemed to switch it all. That it should have been an interception and would bounce off his face mask and just. I mean, that's the type of plays that we talked about in the first game. The teams that have been there before can make those high pressure, high stakes, big moment plays, and San Francisco kind of did the same thing there.
Well, and sometimes you get the bounce. I mean, that's what you just got the bounce. I mean, it wasn't necessarily.
I mean, you need luck, yeah.
Yeah, it's luck. I mean, a little bit of luck, and even Ayuk afterwards kind of said that. He's like, ball came to me, and I was able to hang on to it. Like it's just the way that played out, and yeah, that was the play that turned the momentum around. That got them like just a little bit of confidence, and then they took a mile from an inch there after that because they just kept getting better and better on that offensive side of the ball for sure. But yeah, you mentioned the decisions. That first one I thought was really you're already up. Why not increase the lead a little bit more, make it comfortable, and you choose not to. And then of course the fumble. That was the huge turnaround too, because you still could have maybe went down the field and felt comfortable about where you were, but you gave the ball right back to them, and then they score.
At least with the fumble, though, it was more of a traditional play. Of course, you don't want to fumble like that ever, but it wasn't some type of should you kind of a an analytics type thing. And I guess some of the the people who specialize in that type of thing were saying at least one of I believe it was the first fourth down, whereas that was 50-50, so it wasn't necessarily a bad call. But I'm with you. I just think, at least if anything, to kill momentum. And then you also, not great field position, but you give the, other team the ball at their own 30, essentially. I mean, you're not only not capitalizing on a scoring opportunity, but you're also giving them probably likely better field position than they would have if you score and kick off. And then you don't have any more points on top of that. So I just think that, we said 3 bad things there and 1 good thing. So you just kind of, and if you want to be a gambler and you call, that's what, I don't know if I can see that damn Dan Campbell is going to hit on 18 meme one more time before I freaking throw my phone across the room. That was the hot retweet there on on the Twitter machine these days. But if you want to be a gambler, that's fine. But you get 3-1 odds there by what we just detailed. So you take the odds, right? So that's what I don't get. It's like, if you're going to gamble, it's usually a gambler. If you're going to make any type of money or have any success, you still want the odds in your favor, or at least think that you have something somebody doesn't know about up your sleeve.
Yeah, and of course, and at the end of the day, if those are the decisions you make, you live with it, and he certainly has to do that. But the other thing too, I thought late in the game, well, I guess not late, but when it got close to San Francisco tying the game, when it was kind of close in that range, that 7-point range where they were still down but coming back, that Detroit they got away from what they were doing well. I mean, they were running the ball so well in that game. I know anytime you fumble, that kind of makes you get skittish about doing the same thing. But Montgomery, every time it seemed like they give him the ball on the edge, or even maybe just a little bit of a delayed handoff, it was 5-7 yards every time early in the game. And I don't know why they got away from that. Of course, maybe San Francisco did improve some things on that side to slow them down a little bit more, but I just felt like they weren't sticking to what was them. In certain down situations, they kept getting in those long yardage third downs, whereas that's normally not what they do.
Well, I mean, okay, Gibbs fumbles, but you have another running back you can give it to as well. You even have a fullback out there if you have to. I just think it's something to go away from it that quick, like you said. And it's kind of goes, contrary to what, that team has been this season. It's the defense, the hard nose, bite the kneecap crap we keep
Mhm.
hearing about. Like, well, then do it then, So I mean, that's one thing to say it. It's in these situations. I think a lot of times coaches do veer off, who they are and what they do. And this might have been another example of it, other than taking the fourth down chances. And I honestly thought Goff played pretty good. I was thinking
Yeah.
when they mentioned during the game he was, had a chance of being a second or taking a second team to the Super Bowl. And just thinking about that, I was like, that'd be incredible.
Hmm.
Someone as unballyhooed as
Yeah.
Goff, and he's damn near second team in the Super Bowl. Of course, didn't get it done, but that was just that was an interesting nugget to me. I was just like, then that'd be crazy, but unfortunately, didn't get it done. But no, who knows? They could be back in the spot next year. It's possible. I know there was some comments that came out that he was pretty, to kind of coach telling the team like it's going to be hard to get back, or he may never get back. But I mean, it seems more of a motivational type thing to me. I don't think I
Yeah.
want to. There's a lot of people throwing it out there, kind of being like, "Oh, they're going to be the next Eagles." I think he was just more saying, "This is how we need to start working tomorrow to get back here." That's how I took it, at least.
Yeah, like you said too, for a franchise that's endured the kind of pain they have, and for most of the country probably pulling for them in that
Mhm.
game, that makes it even
Yeah, that was
harder to.
tough, man. That was tough to watch. You don't usually get too up for other fan
Yeah.
bases, but I could feel that one. Ooh.
Of course, the other side of things too, talking about guys that get unballyhooed or get poo pooed. Here's Brock Purdy in the Super Bowl.
Yep.
Everybody all year long talking about how he's just the system guy. He doesn't do this, doesn't do that. I don't know if you saw over the weekend the little rant that Alex Smith went on that I thought was pretty good, talking about the different things that he does and pointing out why all that narrative is wrong. But yeah, and he made plays. Like as the game went on, he got better and better. It's certainly, yeah, that team is loaded with talent at all kinds of different positions. Nobody's denying that, but pretty cool for a guy that kind of gets that narrative fed to him all year long, but still is leading his team, into the top of the mountain.
I mean, I think at times that can maybe play into it to your favor though as well, because the pressure maybe not as much spotlights on you. But I do
True.
get what you're saying. There's kind of a little bit of discredited because system or not, if you're a starting NFL quarterback, you in most cases, of course, there's a few outliers, but you're a damn good player no matter what, like who you play for. If you're a starting quarterback, of course, injuries and sometimes somebody gets in there that maybe shouldn't, or some politics here and there. But as far as just consistent starter and someone that's had success, I wouldn't care what they called you. If you're winning games, that's what your job is to do. So, but I can see that got to add some extra motivation because after a while it would get old. I mean, I get it when maybe when he first came out of nowhere and started just winning games here and there, and you're like, where the hell did this guy come from and all that stuff. But now you know who he is. It's not.
Yeah.
It's kind of just a little bit of a lazy narrative these days. Like he's obviously a proven quarterback and in the Super Bowl, so we'll see how that plays out.
So that sets things up, as we mentioned, for Super Bowl 58. And of course, as we talked about, we were going for Detroit covering the spread in that game. We kind of got the back door, as we alluded to. It was a higher number to begin with when we first talked on the show at like 9.5, I think, when initially the line came out. But we had it at +7 on the graphic. And of course, that's, I think, close to what it was at game time, too. So yeah, the Lions do cover there. So we split on our wagers for the weekend. So now that does set up that game. Of course, we'll get more into it as we get closer to the game too, but did want to touch on how the matchup looks a little bit. The early line that came out was the Niners 1.5-point favorites, and they've got the number at 47.5 for that game. That of course will be played indoors at the new stadium there in Las Vegas. It certainly shapes up to be a potentially really good Super Bowl as far as the football is concerned. Both teams have explosive guys. I think both offenses are capable of being explosive. Obviously, as a fan of one team, I'm certainly going to be biased in my perspective for a little bit, I'm sure. But the one thing that I kind of think coming into this game, just initially, is it seems to me like Kansas City's defense is stepping into the moment, and San Francisco's defense is a little bit more sporadic. I mean, they certainly can play well, but we saw early in that game against the Lions their tendency to give up maybe some big plays and kind of get gashed here and there. And it seems like the Chiefs are playing much better on that side of the ball, just as an overall whole. Not saying that the Niners don't have the offense that could potentially overcome that if they don't play the best on the defensive side. But I think that's where maybe one team has just a touch of an advantage. But it certainly could be interesting.
Yeah, and just looking early and not getting too much into it, but just on the surface, I would think a lower scoring game would favor Kansas City at this point. I would be interested to see. I'm not even going to try to pronounce his name, but I believe the defensive end for the Chiefs had a torn
Oh
ACL.
yeah, Omenihu, yeah,
Yeah, and then Jones, he kept playing, but man, he's banged up.
he is. Yeah,
He's not looking good. So I mean, of course, you got a week off and you recover and all that, but that will be something to watch, I think, because I know their secondary and their linebackers have played well too. But anybody that knows defense, it all starts up front. That's kind of it sets the tone there. So especially when you're going against someone that likes a McCaffrey, you
yeah.
better be have all your p's and q's and everything buttoned up. So that'll just be something to watch. I think just like I said, surface first glance, if it's going to be a high scoring game, San Francisco's got a chance. But any type of this 17-10, 17-14. Oddly enough, I think that which you wouldn't probably have said the last few times they've been in there,
Yeah.
but that would definitely favor the Chiefs. So.
Yeah, yeah. When you think of a Patrick Mahomes led team, that's not exactly the first thing that usually comes to mind, but that's the way they're doing it now here too. So yeah, could be interesting. We'll dive more into it as it gets closer there to that date there on February 11th. So should be a lot of fun. A couple of other topics that we wanted to get into here a little bit. Now I guess I'll stay on the NFL side of it here first. Of course, there's a coach that we've seen an awful too much of on television cameras here the last few weeks because his team won the national championship, Mr. Harbaugh, and then of course he was watching his brother's team play here this past weekend. But Jim Harbaugh is going to be the new head coach of the LA Chargers. We kind of thought that might be coming when we talked to you last time, and now it's official. So he has gone back to the pro game. Saw a little note or comment that he made that there's no Lombardi Trophy in college football. Okay, whatever. And obviously, as we talked about before, it might have been the time that he needed to get out of town too, because he may not have been on the sidelines for the full season for Michigan, depending on how this punishment hands down for them as well. But I think everybody kind of thought this is what was going to happen. Whether or not he has success again at the NFL level, I'm not really sure.
Yeah, that jury's out on that one for sure. And it's kind of maybe a bit of a curious, job selection as well too. On both sides, I
Yeah.
don't think the Chargers always seem to be not far off, but then that nothing ever comes out of
Yeah.
it. So they're kind of like one of those teams that's for some reason the hype's always there, and I do think they have some good players, but until you see it, you kind of don't believe it. At least from my end, that's how I look at it, and I don't. Whether or not he can coach at again at the NFL level, you have to be proven. Of course, he's had success in the past, so you got to give him maybe the benefit of the doubt there. But I don't know. This is a little bit taller of a task. I think a lot of these coaches, and for good reason, the reason they're in their spots, they're pretty good about picking and choosing where they coach and that type of thing. Everything that goes into it, building a roster and all that. I will be curious if how much power he ends up having in that type of thing. That will probably go a long way. And he's only got about 5 years max because that seems to be about when he starts wearing out his welcome. So you kind of better get going quick and get some success here in the first year or two. Otherwise, I guess the good thing is there's not going to be a lot of it ain't going to unruly fan base or anything like that because it's basically just like whatever. unless the Raiders come back to LA, they're not going to have many fans in the stadium regardless, except for the opposing team.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think what's interesting to me from the other side of it is if I was in that situation, obviously, he did what he wanted to. He reached the top. He won his school a national championship. That probably makes you feel some sense of, like bookend to what you were trying to do there, I suppose. But at the same time, I think it would be awfully hard as somebody who went to school there, has built up the program and having so much success, even if there is going to be some other outside, stuff that goes on because of the other stuff off the field. It'd be awfully hard for me to say I'm just going to leave. I mean, he had a pretty good situation there where he could have just wrote it out for an awful long time.
Yeah, especially when you don't really know kind of what you're walking into. I'm not saying he hasn't been in the league before, but it's a totally different situation. And you kind of got right where you need to be, and then starting over again seems like a questionable choice at least. But that's why I think there's more to it than just wanting to leave and get the Lombardi Trophy. There's probably a lot more smoke there than what was actually going to happen to them otherwise.
Yeah.
It
Well,
seems. Go ahead.
well, and the other thing too is they're not really getting rid of all that either as Michigan, because they decided to keep the guy that's on the staff as the coach. I mean, that might have been your opportunity to say the slate gets cleaned a little bit because you bring in another guy as your head coach. But it sounds like Harbaugh kind of lobbied for more to get the position, and of course we saw the nonsense with him, crying every other day when he got to
Yeah.
be the coach. So, but yeah, questionable to me why you would go that route, I guess.
Well, and then I think he's bringing in looks like quite a bit of his, whatever's not staying there is coming with him to L.A. So I don't know. That doesn't seem to always play out in the right way. Just taking a staff to a new location. I think a lot of it too is just not having to deal with the recruiting stuff and just
Yeah.
wanting a little bit, that the kind of dealing with adult versus adult type thing. Maybe that's but at his age, I mean, it's not like he's the energy to rebuild a program, and then I mean you're still rebuilding a program, whether it's professional or college. Is I don't know if it's there or not. We'll see. He's got to better double up on his milk and maybe get some thinner khaki pants because it gets a little warm there in Southern California.
Yeah, you're gonna have to talk to the folks at Lululemon there to get you some
Yeah.
better
Could you
slides.
imagine him wearing those form-fitting pants? I don't know if they let Cha in LA either, like he's got up there in Michigan. I don't know if that's a
Yeah,
big Cha community.
I don't know either. I guess I don't know. I could be very wrong in it. Obviously from a player perspective, maybe that's why Michigan decides to go with more. But to me, this just seems like this is not going to last. Like he'll be there a few years, and then they're going to start over again.
How many? I guess like if we do some big, dive into it deep, we could probably come up with a few. But just off the top of my head, I can't think of many handpicked, predecessors that have had success in the long run, at least maybe a year or two, just because they have so much talent left over. But it's hard to think of someone just right off top of mind that has been this is the guy, and then he ends up being the guy. So we'll see. Maybe this is the time for it to happen, but. I think they're probably just happy they got their title, and then
Yeah,
they can do no wrong right now. Just give them a
yeah,
couple years, I guess.
yeah. That's true. So that was a couple of kind of headlines that were connected there to the college football world. Another thing we were kind of talking about and joking about, it's a little more on the lighthearted side here. The Big 12 basketball scene has gotten awfully interesting here the last few weeks as far as some of the shenanigans that have been going on the sidelines and crowd interaction and players celebrating and those types of things. One thing that was pretty funny that was involved the squad that I follow in Iowa State. They had a nice little week at home where they invited the teams from the state of Kansas in and gave them an L to head the other direction. So I was appreciative of that, getting K State on Wednesday and then they beat Kansas on Saturday. But during the K State game. Their head coach Jerome Tang, who for all respects seems like a pretty good coach. He did a really good job last year getting that program turned around, but he kind of lost his mind in the middle of the game. Got really upset with what was going on with the fans, and then the fans just kept giving it to him harder, and it became a whole like joke thing. And then it came out later after the game that one of the things he was claiming to be upset about was he thought that the fans were filming K State's huddle and then texting information to the Iowa State bench to give them an advantage during the contest. Well, of course, later TJ Otzelberger came out over the weekend and said, these allegations are ludicrous. Like, this is ridiculous. Why would you think that this is the case of something that's going on? And of course, all the fans had a little bit of fun with it too, just making how crazy you are to come up with this idea, and this is what you're pissed off about. And to me, ultimately in that game, it really kind of cost his team too, because that's when the game turned on its head and they didn't have any chance at that point. And it just became kind of a joke, but pretty funny when things like that go on and you get some of those wild accusations.
Yeah, that's why I took it more of like a comical thing, I guess. I don't know if you're gonna make some claim like that, at least have a little bit something behind it. Of course, he just kind of probably just in the moment, got
Yeah, probably just
emotions
buzzed
got the
you.
best of him, and they've had a little bit of a rough year though with some off the court issues and things of that sort. So maybe it's kind of just all build up for them and just kind of boiled over there. But some of these some of these feuds here back and forth are kind of remind me of those good old Big Eight days. You got some heat, some piss and vinegar, in high volumes there at these with these Big 12 teams. So I like to see that.
Yeah. The funny follow up to that, of course, on Saturday was when Kansas was in town. The Iowa State student section knew all about this. And the first time that Kansas took a timeout, the entire student section got their phones out and acted like they were filming the huddle. So had a little fun with it for sure. The other team that's been in the middle of this nonsense is, of course, one that always is in the middle of the
Imagine that,
nonsense. The Texas Longhorns, who feel like they're entitled to, being the best team and nobody can make fun of us type of thing. They've been very vocal about being upset that fan bases have been doing the horns down, and even some of the opposing players, of course, after they have gotten beat. Rodney Terry went on a rant after they had lost a game about that, and being upset that it's disrespectful and nobody's following the rules. Well, not long after that, they won a game and went a little bit excessive on their celebrations, where people were kind of giving it back to them. And then they play BYU here this last week on the road. They take a big loss in that game, but apparently the students had their horns down shirts ready in that game, and they were instructed to remove them because of the complaining by the Texas faithful. So no surprise who it is and who's whining, but very funny that this has become another thing.
I mean, it kind of reminds you of other facets of life, I guess. But for being or thinking so highly of yourself, some little two fingers can make you feel so bad about yourself, and that you have to go to the lengths that that Texas goes to kind of prevent people from doing it. And the thing on top of it, I mean, this Big 12 just goes right along with it, and whatever they want, say,
Yeah.
okay, if Texas says we can't do it, you can't do it, and that's that was kind of just been that's been who they are ever since they've existed, I guess. So you just gotta kind of, I guess teams don't mind putting up with that crap. But it's just funny though, like that's the type of thing that gets you mad. But some of the f your mother chants that come from the student section, or just even worse. It's oh no, that's fine, but don't put your little two fingers down.
Yeah.
Then that's that's where we draw the line. That's just it's kind of hilarious, and almost like if you didn't see it, you might not believe it.
Well, and if nothing else, as a program, like you can take that one of two ways. And for me, that would be like it's almost a sign of respect. Like you guys know us so well and know what our traditions are so well that you're going to take that and try to turn it around on us. Well, obviously, the easy thing to do is just to go win the games and prove them wrong. That's all you got to do. So, most of the time, I think teams would take that as a motivating factor and have some fun with it. Now, the fact that they're even pointing it out and whining and complaining about it, it's just going to make it worse. All those other schools are going to continue to do that stuff, and the students especially. That's going to go hardcore. So you're drawing attention.
Yeah,
To
especially in
yourself.
the college game when it comes to telling that people that age not to do something, they're going to do it just exactly that. So yeah, I mean it's nothing that's ever going to end. It's going to be curious to see how that go. With the SEC and
Yeah.
how like how the kind of, because they're obviously coming in thinking they're going to be and at least in football they're coming off a playoff appearance, and basketball they're having a decent season. So as far as on the court and field they've done enough. It's just that that attitude that just doesn't mix well with others. It's kind of like the bratty kid that's never going to get along.
Yeah. Yeah. Definitely going to be very interesting with some of these, intense football fan bases that they're going to be matched up against now in the SEC, how they handle that and react when they, try to complain in the same type of scenario. I don't think it's going to go over quite as smoothly anymore.
Yeah, it's just maybe not calling the shots. I'm not saying these SEC teams are anything great either, but
Yeah.
it's you're not the king of the castle anymore. You kind of had somebody throw you the life preserver and pull you out, so you're not exactly going to be calling the shots. At least I wouldn't think. But we'll see how that goes.
Yeah. It has been a little bit funny here down the stretch with the conference and some of the ads and stuff that have kind of just taken their jabs because they don't care anymore about what Texas thinks. I don't know this latest scenario though. A little bit surprising, like you said. I guess that the conference would oblige. I mean, what do you care anymore?
Yeah,
Who cares?
especially when they're leaving now. Now's the time to get your shots in.
Exactly. But yeah, we'll see how it plays out down the road for them. But yeah, certainly is making for fun. It's going to be a fun season there basketball wise in the Big 12. Of course, a bunch of great teams. I mean, that's part of it. You knew the league was going to be good anyways, but now you're adding a little bit more fuel to the fire. So I don't know that.
You might be making a trip down to Power and Light there. See what then maybe mid-March.
I was going to say your city might need some extra security ready because have some brawls out there.
If they can handle that Jackson Mahomes boy, I think they'll be okay with the Longhorn frat boys.
They've got some experience. Yeah, it should be fun. So that's kind of what we had on our docket here this week with what's going on in the sports world. We do want to get to a few picks here for you before we leave you as well, because of course we can't leave you empty-handed any week that we're doing this. So, SJ, I know you were taking a look at a couple of things. Of course, we were talking beforehand. It's one of those things with college basketball. You really can't go far too out down the road because the lines and stuff aren't out. But we do have a couple coming up tomorrow that you were taking a peek at.
Yeah. Basketball's a little tricky, even the NBA. So we'll probably, go ahead and do the couple we have now, and then maybe add some to the graphic. We'll definitely give you at least a 24-hour window though, so you can go ahead and make a play or whatever. So, but at least one college I was looking at was Illinois and Ohio State. Illinois' 3-point favorite. I actually like them to cover that. Ohio State's coming in losing 5 of their last 6, while Illinois is on a 3 out of 4 type of streak here. So just the way overall they've been playing, Illinois is actually kind of, other than that Northwestern game, which is, you kind of get those blips. It's part of college basketball. It's not that not too surprising. They didn't even end up being a close game in the end, but they seem to be hitting their stride this time of year. Early on, I think preseason they were, if not in the top 25, fairly close or rather highly regarded, and then kind of watched them play the first few weeks and didn't really get it. Now it seems like they're kind of forming into that team that they thought they were going to be, and definitely someone that can maybe make a run there, at least within the first weekend of the tournament. So I like Illinois to cover 3 points against Ohio State tomorrow night.
Yeah, that's an interesting game to keep an eye on for sure. Another one, I looked at the list here and kind of was peeking at, and this number is a little bit much, but you've got a pissed off Kansas team who just lost on the road. And they're playing an Oklahoma State team that's pretty much in shambles right now. They just can't get anything together. Kansas is favored by 14.5, but I do think they're probably going to blow the doors off of them just because they want to get back in that win column and get right. So I'm gonna lay that number, even though it seems ridiculous in college hoops. But Kansas, they need something good to go their way, and that's a good team to kind of get healthy on. Other game that I'll take a peek at here in the college basketball line I saw. And of course, I always kind of stick to the league that I watch the most. But in the Big 12, TCU is playing host to Texas Tech tomorrow night. TCU a 5.5-point favorite there at home. I know Tech is a solid team as well, but I've seen TCU play, and especially at home, they are pretty strong, and they tend to finish games really well too. So that 5.5, I'm going to lay there as well. And I think TCU covers that spread, gets the win at home there against Texas Tech. So that was a couple of things I was looking at there in college hoops. I know you were peeking maybe an NBA game there as well.
Yeah, I'll go ahead and throw that on the, like we said, it's a little tricky. I'll throw it on the graphic for sure. But I also had a couple UFC kind of get into that. We'll get into that mix a little bit here. And same thing, man. It's just, we're going to have to maybe time this better here for the listeners. But we'll see. We'll get into a group, but we're still in football season, so we're used to that weekly type deal. But it varies here with other sports. But we'll go ahead and make a couple UFC picks. I like Natalia Silva. She's kind of a up-and-comer here, undefeated in the UFC so far. I like her I want to pick her to win by finish, of course, like we said. Those odds aren't up yet. If you're going to make the bet right now, though, I like the under 2.5, and you're actually getting plus 230 on that. So I'd go ahead and take that if you want to go ahead and play early in the week. But watch for that to win by finish, or watch for that line to come down. And then the other one I like, the UFC, is Drew Dober. I'm going to take him on the money line. He's actually the underdog, but just slight, plus 130. He's won actually 4 of his last 5 fights, 4 of those by KO. So I think he can maybe get it done here. He's just a little bit tougher tested there, especially when it comes to finish. I like him doing that. It's going against Hanato Moicano, and he hasn't exactly shown the best chin. That's why I kind of like Dober to pull out the upset. But like we said, I'll add some more details here as we get later with the graphic. But we at least had to give you a little taste of what I'm looking at this weekend.
Yeah, and I know we didn't really have this on our list of stuff to talk about, but I saw your recent tweet there as well. Kind of funny that the UFC kind of picks and chooses when guys can say what they want.
Yeah, it was crazy, and the thing too is it's I guess just to fill in, John Anik is the main play-by-play guy for UFC, and actually like basically the only legitimate journalist they have on staff there. A couple sideline cage side reporters, whatever you call them. There's a couple good ones too. I don't want to dismiss their talents, but as far as the regular on-air team, broadcast team, he's definitely heads and shoulders above anybody else. No one can even hold a candle to him. So of course, just with social media in general, there's always been the trolls and that type of thing online. But as far as how it's moderated these days, and this is a discussion for another day, but I don't think there's much of an argument, is that there's a little bit more of that that's kind of let past the goalie, so to speak. I don't know if it's just more bots, or the language is just allowed more, but basically fans kind of got after him after he had there was a close fight last weekend, and one of the guys has kind of become a fan favorite is I guess maybe, I don't even know how to describe it, more of a older school mentality as far as as opposed to certain communities, maybe be the LGBTQ community and things of that sort. So he's kind of been a little popping off on that type of thing. So he's got his sect of fans against another guy, and kind of just outlandish comments, slurs, just stuff you would never say to other people. And of course they get after him because they're upset that he thought their guy lost the fight. To make a long story short, and he went as far as to say, basically, I don't know how much longer I even want to do this. And that's a high profile job that you're kind of going out and saying that's not really worth it when you got the fans coming at you like the way they were coming on it. Because it's one thing to to come at someone with a reasoned approach, or even have a discussion, but it's far from that. It's more just F you, what the hell you're talking about. And this is a guy who's been in around the game for a long time. He's even called NFL football, and he's a seasoned veteran. He does his homework. He doesn't miss very often. He's even actually pretty deep in the prognostication world. He's got a pretty good name for himself in the gambling world as well. So he knows what he's talking about. But he came out and apologized, and of course we know that probably was maybe elbow nudged by some of his bosses there. But we talked, mentioned, I've maybe off air, but how last week when Strickland is the fighter who we're talking about, how his fans kind of got a little out of hand, is he was able to kind of just, basically say stuff that would get you fired from any other job on the planet. And his boss, I guess, even though they're contractors, we'll call him his boss, Dana White, kind of saying, it's free speech. But I believe Anik should have been free speech as well there. But in this case, he was forced to apologize, or we'll put it in quotes, forced to apologize. So it's just funny how that works, and how it's free until it's it doesn't go along with what you agree with. So
got to support your narrative and your cause. It's unfortunate. Yeah, interesting that whole part of the world with media and sports is continuing to evolve, and it's probably not going to get better, unfortunately. But you see a lot of those types of things, and it's going to make you question a lot of integrity type of situations, I think, for sure.
Well, especially when you're dealing with a sport like that, you do kind of it's a little bit out. It's obviously growing and there's more popularity, but it's still kind of a niche market, if you will. So there's maybe a little bit more of an expectation of that, but it's still, I don't think it has to be that way. You can still have a legitimate sports conversation, as it is a sport after all. I think that it's the sooner that gets to be more of the standard, the better, because who knows there's been within the last 5 or 10 years of talk of who knows how much longer that sport's going to be around, and that's the type of thing that would kind of push it back towards that way of
Yeah.
Why would a general, a casual person want to kind of jump into this and it's just a bunch of freaking Neanderthals, just freaking, demeaning each other, and that's, I don't know, that's the part I don't like about. I like it as a sport. Everything around it is just, it's not for me, most of it.
Yeah. Well, yeah. If you want to build some integrity and trust and respect, then yeah, you got to draw a line somewhere. You got to have some boundaries, and that's
But I mean,
obviously what
what's
they're
to
dealing with.
expect from, I guess the top dog, basically the top visual dog, this, smacking his wife and just getting away with it with no repercussions at all. So what do you expect?
Yeah.
I mean, on camera, and it's, his punishment in his mind was he has to live with that the rest of his life. That was it
Mhm.
literally said that in a press conference. So that kind of tells you what you're dealing with there, and it's too bad for the athletes and what could be a, you know could be a big sport. I know it's big already, but could be even bigger if not for certain things.
Yeah. So that's what we had for you here this week. We'll, of course, get into the full rundown of the Super Bowl talk here coming up for you next week, and get into some other college basketball, I'm sure. And like SJ said, we'll look at some NBA things here and there. So be on the lookout for those graphics on social media. Twitter at SJMBets is his handle. Mine is at CherokeeCP. Of course, we'll share the program there as well. And you can listen to us on all the different various platforms. From what I understand, I don't know how this is all playing out, but the Google podcast platform actually is going away, and it's going to be all tied into YouTube Music now eventually too. So either way, you've got lots of places to find it and be able to listen, and we certainly hope you do that. Again, if you have anything suggestion-wise to throw at us, we would love that as well, and we'll have some fun with you here on the program. So that's SJ Munoz. I'm Chris Parks. Thanks for joining us for another week of Every Day We're Covering. We'll see you next week for some more covers.